Prime Minister's roadmap to recovery holds out the prospect that we can return to so many of the freedoms we've been missing, and that by summer and autumn we could be enjoying for ourselves again, getting together with friends and family. All of us are looking forward to that. But between now and then, we actually have quite a long way to go. And the reason for that is that the rates at the moment in Nottinghamshire County are still running at a very high level. It's really important that we bring those rates much lower. To continue with rates at this level, we risk seeing a resurgence which would threaten our local NHS, and it's imperative that we avoid that. So I'm urging everybody, right from the start of this roadmap as we move into step one, to continue to do all you can to pay attention and to follow all of the rules that are in place in step one. It's really critical that we don't race ahead to a next step without completing this one. To do that would risk the recovery that we're all looking for.
Okay, you're live now, Leader.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome you all today to the meeting of the Policy Committee on the 17th of March. And we've got a very full agenda today, and I think it's going to be an interesting meeting. So, Joe, as well as myself, there are other members of the Council present. Would you please call the register?
Thank you, Leader. In addition to yourself, we have councillors Reg Adair, Chris Barnfather, Richard Butler, John Cotty, Kate Fole, Stephen Garner, Kevin Greaves, who is substitute for Councillor Glyn Guilfoyle, Tony Harper, Richard Jackson, John Knight, Bruce Lawton, Rachel Madden, David Martin, Philip Owen, John Peck, Mike Pringle, Alan Rhodes and Muriel Weiss. Councillor Liz Plant is also in attendance to speak on agenda item 8, which is the provision of replacement primary school and new secondary school West Bridgeford and expansion of Rushcliffe School. And Councillor Sybil Fielding is also in attendance to speak on agenda item 9, the proposed lease of North Worksop Children's Centre. In terms of officers present today, as well as myself, also invited, we should have the Chief Executive Anthony May, Monitoring Officer Marge Toward, the Chief Finance Officer Nigel Stevenson, Corporate Directors Adrian Smith and Colin Pettigrew, Service Directors Matthew Neal and Steve Edwards, Programme Director Andy Evans, Group Managers Rachel Miller, Neil Gamble and Karen Human, Team Manager Mike Sharp and Youth Service Manager Pom Bogle. Today we also have Stuart Young with us, who is the Executive Director for East Midlands Councils too.
Thank you very much, Joe. And welcome Stuart as well to the meeting. And let's go now to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is the minutes which were held on the 10th of February of 2021. Do you all agree they're a true and correct record? Thank you. Do I have apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. We've got the apology from Councillor Guilfoyle.
But we have a substituting Kevin Greaves, don't we?
We do, yes, we do.
You. Yes. And welcome, Kevin. And are there any declarations of interest, please, from members or officers that's disclosable pecuniary interest and a private interest, which are pecuniary and non-pecuniary? I can't see any hands raised. I'm assuming there are no interests declared. If throughout the meeting you think you have an interest, then I'm happy to take them at that point. So now we'll move on then to agenda item 4, which is the work of the East Midlands Councils. And I'm very happy to welcome today Stuart Young, who is the Director of the East Midlands Councils. And Stuart, we'd like to invite you now to give your report. Over to you. Thank you, Chair.
And thanks also for the invitation to attend the committee meeting today. It's a really helpful opportunity for myself to engage with the county council on the issues included in my report. And I appreciate members would have seen the summary report that updates on a number of areas of EMC's current work. Unsurprisingly, much of our work has continued in its support of the sector in responding to the pandemic, not least as we now turn to planning for our route through the government's roadmap, alongside mitigation of any potential spike in infections. And on this, we're hosting a workshop for senior colleagues for the week after next across the region, just to work through and to plan collectively on some of these issues and challenges. I think overall the region's demonstrated real resilience and strength of collective endeavour in addressing many of the challenges set for local government in ensuring the effectiveness in its response to the pandemic. As an organisation, EMC, we continue to provide workforce support to local authorities in the region. It's been really pleasing to see the uptake in virtual networks and the workshops, the seminars and the events. And that's really been quite significant for both councillors and officers. And it took a while to stand up the new virtual approach, but I think that's a good reflection on the work and also the engagement of local authorities across the East Midlands. Turning to growth and investment, if I may, many of the challenges remain, and I appreciate that you're very well aware of the challenges that the region does face, and also the opportunities. We do know the region has suffered historically from low levels of investment and productivity. I think it's pretty evident there's a link between investment and productivity levels. And also a further word of caution when we talk about recovery. We know that the impact of COVID has been and will be uneven across the country. And there are large areas of the East Midlands that are, I think, highly dependent on vulnerable sectors. And also we do not have a significant footprint of those sectors generally associated with high growth and high value added. I think that's something that we need to bear in mind as we chart our route through in terms of economic support and recovery over the next 6, 12, 18 months. And I think it puts into, stark focus the opportunities offered by the Levelling Up agenda and the programmes associated with that, but also our responsibility to make sure that we chase down those opportunities. In regard to HS2, members will be aware of the ongoing work that the region continues to lead on HS2 through Councillor Cutts as chair of the region's HS2 board. Uncertainty does continue. The integrated rail plan for the Midlands and the North that will set out government's plans to take forward the eastern leg of HS2 is now unlikely to be published until after the local authority elections. And I think the National Infrastructure Commission report initially, and also the IRP, has been, well, the publication of both has been continually set back. We're not now anticipating publication until after the elections. So in between now and then, I think it's really important we continue our work to influence the key decision makers on this. And it is a political decision to be made. And that work's being led by council leaders and through MPs into Whitehall and Westminster. And we continue to work importantly with partners along the route, particularly Leeds. And I think that working relationship has been really quite effective in terms of making sure that it's understood it isn't just of this region. It's much wider than that, and it's of national significance. But as I said, ultimately, this is a political decision. We've been clear on the robustness of the business case. You know, the economic growth, the business case is absolutely clear, but it's a political decision to be made now. If I may just turn to asylum and refugee resettlement, that's also highlighted in the report. I don't think it'd be a surprise to many that this has been quite a challenging area of policy and programme delivery over the past 12 months, and that's been accentuated by the pressures from COVID. So in regard to asylum dispersal, that mainly affects the cities of the East Midlands, but also there are two borough areas within Nottinghamshire of Gedling and Broxtowe that are also asylum dispersal areas. Although they haven't been impacted upon the step up of contingency hotel use, that has been a concern of the three city areas. And it's a concern because it isn't the right place to house people. it places additional pressures upon local authorities, and it places additional pressures on local services. Now, there are plans of the Home Office and Serco, the provider, to exit from those arrangements, and we're starting to see that happen. But it's important that local authorities are aligned. They listen to local authorities and they respond to the concerns of local authorities in terms of how we exit from those arrangements. But it's really important that they are that those contingency arrangements cease. On unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, for this region, there are particular pressures in relation to the numbers of former US care leavers, and this has been an important feature of our work with the Home Office in support of the National Transfer Scheme. I'm particularly grateful for the work of Leave members and Directors of Children's Services in the region. We've put together a credible and robust evidence-based government, and I think they've listened. And there was a recent meeting with the Minister that I thought was a good reflection of this approach. So to close, Chair, thank you for the ongoing engagement of Nottinghamshire County Council. It remains a valuable partner. But also, if there are issues that you suggest that EMC should focus on in the coming year, please do let us know, because obviously we're in the process of putting together our work programme, and it's an important opportunity for us as an organisation to engage with our membership, whether the service support, the focus of the organisation is the right one going forward. Thank you, Chair.
You're muted, Kay.
Muted, yeah. Stuart, you're happy to answer questions, I assume. Before we open it then to members to debate, I'd like to propose we accept the report, which of course is in the yellow pages and quite an extensive report, together with your papers today. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much, Reg. Right, it's open for questions now, and your hand is the first hand up, Alan.
Thanks, Kay. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart, for your report. I actually don't have a question on the report, but I do want to make a short statement. That is to thank Stuart and East Midlands councils for being such tremendous advocates for the East Midlands. You constantly campaign for our fair share of the levelling up. You are constantly at the forefront of representing the views of local authorities, local authority leaders and chief executives, regardless of political persuasion. The leaders, of course, not the chief executives. At all, you know, at every opportunity. So, and as always, Stuart, I don't want to embarrass you, but you always present a full and interesting report to this committee when you come here. I attend East Midlands Council's meetings regularly. I've worked closely with Stuart, continue to do so, and I will say without a shadow of a doubt that this is an organisation well worth being a member of and well worth supporting. East Midlands Council is doing a tremendous job. Well done, Stuart, and please give our thanks to the team as well, if you will.
I'm sure we all echo those words as well, Alan. Thank you. Kate, your hand's up next.
Thank you. Yeah, just to agree absolutely with Alan and to thank Stuart. I mean, when I was newly in this role, I really didn't much idea, to be honest with you, what East Midlands Council is all about. But now, sort of sitting on one of the boards and actually getting more involved and understanding it better, I think the depth and the breadth of the work that you do, Stuart, with a relatively small team, small resources, is absolutely awesome. So just thank you. And going back to what you've just said to us, I'd be really interested to know and understand a little bit more of the issues around care leavers outside this meeting. But no, just thank you. You're doing a tremendous job, you and your team.
Thank you. John Peck.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Stuart, for that report. And just to briefly comment on a couple of areas that are mentioned within the yellow pages of your report, which refer to my division, and that's 3.8b, A614 enhancement. I'm not necessarily expecting answers on these, Stuart, but it concerns me a little bit that a further consultation was required last year, and I don't think we've heard very much on the progress of that major investment which is required on the A614. I'm sure it's going ahead. I don't think I've got any concerns on that, but it's more a question of when does worry me, because we've been waiting for this for a long time. And on the second point, on 310, where various investments are mentioned there relating to the national infrastructure strategy, Maid Marian line, good, happy with that, no problem there. The Robin Hood line extension, which would go right through my division, seems to have been lost somewhere. I am concerned about that, because it was part of the tendering process for the new East Midlands line operator, that at the earliest date there should be a business case made for the extension of the Robin Hood line. I know it seems a bit strange to be talking about this at the present time, where rail passenger numbers are almost non-existent, but nevertheless we're going to come out of this pandemic at some point, I'm sure, and hopefully passenger numbers will get back to somewhere around where they were, and this extension of the Robin Hood line through Warsop, Edwinstowe, through to Ollerton is still an extremely important infrastructure development for our part of the county, and I don't want this to be lost, because it is a requirement of the operator that they do make this business case for that extension, and so far it's not happened.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you at the end, Stuart, if you can wrap all these questions up together. So I have Muriel's hands now. Muriel.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, really to echo what Alan Rhodes has said, Stuart, in terms of your work and your reporting back to us, and to particularly thank you for your consistent role as broker in relation to unaccompanied asylum seeking children between the government and local authorities. I can see what your what your approach is, and it's had some positive outcomes as well as we've gone along. Just one specific question in relation to paragraph 421. Is there any likelihood of the high rate being extended beyond December this year, or is that still being negotiated? And also, I just wonder, in terms of 422, in terms of the children transferred on the basis of that higher rate, how many of those children came to Nottinghamshire?
Thank you, Muriel. I've got David Martin now. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Stuart. It's a very comprehensive report. Great support from East Midlands councils. I went to a meeting in 2013 in Loughborough where Nicky Morgan first talked about East Midlands HS2, and connectivity was the buzzword. So I'm glad to see that the Midland Main Line is electrification is on the agenda, as well as I think bringing HS2 at least to Towton is crucial for our economy in Nottinghamshire, but also the Robin Hood line and the Maid Marian line. The Maid Marian line is definitely crucial to us in the northern area of Nottinghamshire, northwest area, because it gives us massive connectivity. So whether we get the rest of HS2 Eastern Leg to Leeds, I don't know whether it's a brokerage deal, whether we're talking about electrifying the main line, or whether we're going to get HS2 and we're putting both in the pot in the hope that we'll get one, and I'm not quite clear on that. So that would be helpful if we could get more of a view on that. I'm frustrated with the government's lack of clarification on it. I had a resident ring me up only the other day. She's 82, owns her own property, and it's due to be knocked down as a result of HS2. And she's prevaricating over what to do with it. She can't sell it. A neighbour's got her house up for sale, and she can't sell that either. I have said that probably the price was too high, but that fell on deaf ears. So clarification is all too important, not just for residents in Towton, Nuttall and Whatnot, but also for residents in Selston, Plesley, Tibshelf and all the way up to Sheffield, because it's really important. And I am frustrated about the imbalance in finance between the West Midlands and the East Midlands, because it's quite stark. So I don't know why the government aren't supporting this, because clearly there's a business case that it's clearly supported by these issues. And things like the Robin Hood line and the Maid Marian line are very easy fixes, along with the electrification of the main line, and they are easier fixes than HS2. So I read with interest as well about the immigration of British national overseas, Hong Kong. Are these figures a forecast of people who are likely to come over, and is that spread across the country, or is that just in the East Midlands? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. Anybody else want to make any comments? I think I could probably give you an update on the 614. John Cotty, do you have some information for us on this?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I had a briefing this morning at 8:30 on the 614. All the information required, we are working with the Department of Transport and we are in regular contact with them. All the information is in that they require, and they've informed us that there will be a decision sometime in May. We think that there is quite a few schemes that are going to be announced at that time. Once the officers at the Department of Transport are happy with it, it is then going to the Treasury, and then it will go to number 10 for signing off. So that's the latest update on the 614, Leader.
Thank you very much for that, John. I knew you'd had some information today, so thank you for that. Right, Stuart, you've got a cornucopia of questions there, so would you like to come back and answer them as best you can?
Thank you, and if I miss any, please do remind me. And thanks for the words of support. Don't worry, don't embarrass me. I'm more than happy to receive your kind words, and it's important for me to be able to pass that on to the team. So thank you very much. In relation to connectivity raised by a couple of members, that's fundamental, absolutely fundamental to growth, productivity, economic development. And so you're absolutely right to highlight it. The point in relation to the Robin Hood line extension, I'm sorry, I don't have an update now, but I could, Councillor Peck, because of in particular our ongoing work with the EMR, with our collaboration agreement with them, I can provide an update subsequent to this meeting. But it has been consistently highlighted in terms of its importance, and I'll make sure we provide a progress report in relation to that. Electrification, the Midland Main Line, the Robin Hood line extension, really important issues. And electrification, I remember speaking to a recently retired county chief executive, and one of his first jobs when he started out as a policy officer was to look at the electrification of Midland Main Line in the early 70s. This is how long this has been going on for. And it's long accepted as the region, outside of HS2, the region's infrastructure priority. And it's not an either or with HS2, it's both. So continue to work on it. And actually, in part, it's putting together an incremental approach, demonstrating how it can be delivered at reduced cost, at far reduced cost than some of the previous electrification schemes that we've seen elsewhere in the country, where the costs have just spiraled. And we're having some success with DFT and Network Rail in that regard. You mentioned blight in regard to HS2, and it does tie into the IPR. Certainty. We need certainty in the region. We need a decision to be made. We need a decision in terms of investment, the connectivity proposals that we can put into place. We need certainty because of the blight, the uncertainty it causes for local communities. And it's gone on for too long. We've seen a number of communities across the East Midlands actually that have been bedeviled by blight, and they need some certainty moving forward. And that's why the IPR report is absolutely key. It's key that they get it right, but it's key that the publication is as timely as possible, just to enable partners to put together the plans moving forward. In relation to the the question from Councillor Vice with regard to the to you ask, I don't think it's coincidental that the higher rate enabled a number of local authorities in this region and elsewhere nationally to come forward and to offer a number of places with regard to the National Transfer Scheme, given the higher numbers experienced in Kent and Portsmouth and elsewhere. We're pushing quite hard with the Home Office. If you want this success, if you want the scheme to be a success, you need to make sure that local authorities have sufficient resources to enable to do that. There's a commitment there, but the resources need to be in place. They're due to report on the revised National Transfer Scheme. It's clear that a core component of that has to be the funding element, and we're continuing to push on that. So I don't have the Nottinghamshire numbers to hand, but obviously I know your DCS will be able to update on that. And also the question in relation to Hong Kong B&Os, British National Overseas. These are estimates. There is a wide range of estimates from the Home Office in terms of likely numbers. My initial view was that they need to tighten that up because it is such a wide range. It's very difficult to plan. It seems since we suggested in the first year, they are now estimating about 125,000 Hong Kong B&Os to come over to the UK as part of this scheme. We've already seen 7,000 since the onset of the scheme come over to the UK, and 20,000 have applied, but not come over to date. Now, there's a range of other different constraints upon this, not least COVID. The border's not porous at the moment, so we'd like to see an uptake later on. And at the moment, it's all to do with modelling in terms of the likely impact on the East Midlands. We're suggesting it could be at around 5 to 7% of total numbers coming over to the East Midlands. It's largely down to existing settled communities. So it's mostly going to be, in all likelihood, London, Birmingham, Manchester. The numbers around Leicester and Nottingham, much less or fewer, at around 1 to 1.5 of the total. But it's modelling at the moment. I think we'd like to see the numbers start to come through once some of the national restrictions with regard to COVID start to ease. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Now, Reg, you second this and reserve the right to speak. Is there anything you would like to say?
No, I've got nothing further to add, and thank you, Stuart.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Stuart, for that full report. And I can assure you that the work of this council on all of the issues that we've raised today, the 614, HS2, Robin Hood Line, Maid Marian Line, all of those continue to be in the sights of this council. We'll be working, of course, with the East Midlands councils in the years to come. In fact, I think we have a meeting Friday morning as well. So unless there's anything further anyone wishes to add to this, we're going to now move to the vote. And the proposals are: we consider the information and decide if there are any further actions, and agrees to receive a further update at the future. And I'm now going to ask the Chief Executive or the Deputy Chief Executive to read out the member's name alphabetically, so that we can now come to an approval on this or otherwise. So I'm going to hand over now to Adrian.
Thank you, Leader, and good morning, members. Just a reminder for those who need it that, as with our previous virtual meetings, this is not a recorded vote unless 2 or more members ask for it, but it will help us with making a record of for, against, and abstention. So we'll work through members by alphabetical order as is usual. So first of all, Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson. Sorry, Richard, could you just repeat that?
4.
Thanks, Richard. Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Just check, Rachel, are you with us?
Chair. Oh, my mute button wouldn't work.
No problem. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
And Councillor Vice.
4.
Thank you, members. That's unanimous, Leader.
And thank you very much, Stuart, for attending our meeting today. You are, of course, as a member of the public, and I think of the East Midlands Councils, if you'd like to stay with us, we're very happy to have you as an observer of the rest of our meeting. But thank you very much indeed. I look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Thank you, Chair, and to your committee.
Thank you. Let's now move on then to agenda item 5. This is the East Midlands Development Corporation, and we're going to have an update on the setting of the interim vehicle and the establishment of a core team of structure and the associated posts. Can I remind members that there is an extensive report on this in the exempt part of the agenda, which we will come to towards the end of the meeting. But that gives a lot of the information there, which is currently exempt. So the report provides an update, and the DevCo is being established to address development opportunities on 3 sites. That's Towton, Chetwynd Barracks and Brackley-on-Soar Power Station site, both in Nottinghamshire, and East Midlands Airport area in Leicestershire. Approval for the County Council to recruit and employ the core staff and enter into a secondment agreement with East Midlands DevCo Limited will provide the skills and expertise required to progress the deliverables and the benefits to Nottinghamshire and the wider region. Year 1 deliverables are shown in Appendix 1 of the report, and the overall benefits of the East Midlands Development Corporation are detailed in the report of the Policy Committee on December 2020. That's two meetings ago. At a high level, benefits and include 84,000 jobs, 4.8 billion gross value added, and at least 4,500 homes. So I formally move the report, and do ask if I have a seconder, please.
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much indeed. It's now open for debate. So, Alan, I can see your hand up first.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Chair. We support this report and the proposals contained within it. I have been briefed by the Chief Executive, and I did raise a couple of issues, particularly around paragraph 11, the recruitment of the team, and particularly the temporarily commissioned managing director, which of course is an unusual arrangement, but I've been given a briefing on that, and I'm satisfied with the answer I've been given. Also, paragraph 20, the services that it will be provided by the County Council, HR, procurement, ICT, document services and business systems. I've been assured that will be paid for those services at the appropriate rate. And so, Chair, I'm happy to support this proposal. I think it heralds a new era for our county and for our region, and I wish it well.
Thank you very much, Alan. I can't see any more hands up. Anybody else wish to speak to this? David Martin.
Yes, Chair. I think it's an excellent report. I'm all in favour of it. It shows a clear and concise, determined effort to work out the strategy going forward. Yeah. I think it's very good.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? And this is a real change for our council, a real step forwards. And of course, we're also the host authority on, if you like, looking after the staff belonging to this. But it's across the piece of the different councils. That's the County Council, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Leicestershire, and the district councils, Rushcliffe and Broxton. Do I have any more speakers? Reg, would you like to come in now? I can't see any more hands going up.
I haven't got much to add. I just think it's an essential paper because it's part of our economic growth for the future for the whole area, and I think we've got to be behind. Where's our economic growth going to come from unless we have institutions like this working at it for us? And on that point, I'm more than favour.
Yes, I mean, I can only agree with you. This is one of those steps forward. It's a big step forward for us as a council, big step forward to the region as well. And if we go back to the previous paper where we had the East Midlands report, it's really important that we do start getting some investment into the East Midlands, and this is a really good step in that direction. So now I'm going to now move to the vote, and we are voting on the approval to establish 6.5 full-time equivalent core team posts as part of the Place Department, as detailed in paragraphs 12 and 13 of Appendix 2, and subject to appropriate legal agreements being put in place. And we're also going to delegate authority to the Service Director of Customers, Governance and Employees in consultation with the Group Manager and Legal and Democratic Services to negotiate and finalise the legal agreements required to give effect to the secondment and the support services arrangements. That's what we're voting on today. I'm now going to ask the Chief Executive, or Adrian, the Deputy Chief Executive on this occasion, to read out the names for approval or otherwise. So over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, so starting with Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Cotty.
For.
Councillor Cutts.
For.
Councillor Fowle.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Harper.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Knight.
For.
Councillor Lawton.
For.
Councillor Madden. For. We can see that. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Owen.
For.
Councillor Peck.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Rhodes.
For.
And Councillor Vice.
For.
Thank you, members. It's carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Right, let's now move on to agenda item 6. And this is delivering major programmes of work and bids for funding in the Place Department. The report seeks approval for the provision of an interim funding for the period to April 2021 to September 2021 to support the continued delivery of the major programmes of work and development of the bids for external funding through the Place Department. In December 2018, the Policy Committee established a flexible pool of resource to support the delivery of a significant number of major capital projects within the Place Department. The resource established was £650,000 for the full financial years of 2019-20 and 2021, and £100,000 for 2018 and 19. To date, this funding has supported £56.8 million of investment in the county, which is significant, and more recently, an additional £11 million of investment to support the economic recovery of the action plan. And I think you'll all agree that this does represent a significant amount of return for our investment in this. There is a need, however, to continue to deliver the initiatives that were outlined in that report, pursue the initial investment opportunities and drive growth within the county and the wider East Midlands. And it's important that this council puts itself in the best position possible to capitalise on new government initiatives and funding opportunities that are being announced. And you will have seen in the recent budget statement that government has set out its plans for levelling up the community renewal funds within the county council. We will play a leading role. So it's really important that we respond quickly to this. The report requests the contingency funding of up to £430,000 to be made available for the first 6 months of the financial year 2021-22. And a further report will be brought to the Policy Committee in September 2021, outlining the approach to delivering major projects and bids for funding to cover the term of the new administration. So I formally move those recommendations. We're set out on page 39 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, could I have speakers who'd like to speak to this item? I can see a hand go up. I'm not sure who it is. Bruce.
John
Bruce
Cotty.
Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I may have jumped in front of John actually, but this is a very important paper. production of shovel-ready schemes is essential for us as a council to be able to jump on the back of funding announcements to be able to bring schemes forward. If they're not ready, we can't access the funding, and therefore we'll lose out, not only as a council, but lose out for the people of Nottinghamshire. There are a number of schemes, of which Kelham Bridge is one, that are in desperate need to be carried out to be able to improve and maintain the financial viability of many of the businesses that operate in my area and in the Newark area. Take, for example, in relation to bottlenecks like Kelham Bridge. It is extremely important that this council accepts this funding. And whilst I'm on, I didn't bring it up at the previous agenda item, but an example of this is the A614, and I was interested to see Councillor Peck asking for an update on an initiative actually that was put forward by you. I spoke with you 4 years ago, and we expressed how important it was that the north-south corridor of the A614 was delivered for the people, particularly in the coalfield communities north of Nottingham. And so I'd like it on record, my thanks, and the thanks of my residents actually in Bilsthorpe for all the hard work that has been put in by the department and you personally for pushing the A614 corridor.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah. I've got John Cotty next and then David Martin. So John.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, thank you, Bruce, for jumping in there. That's fine. It does need saying. Last month we received funding from the Midlands Engine to work up the bypass for the Kelham Bridge and the community there, and that means that we'll be able to get it shovel ready for if and when in the future government comes forward with projects that we can put forward. So it is important. There was very little of that on the shelf that I inherited. Everything we've had to go through on the 614 is a great example. Also the A46 and the work we've been doing with Highways England and the government on those. It has been a long progress. And also I would include the railway lines. And I think that what Councillor Peck said, we'll find out in the near future, because government has been focused on keeping our economy in the best shape it can through COVID-19 and have been distracted from doing what they need to do. But we now do have a really good contact through to the Department of Transport. And I'd like to actually say thank you to the officers who've worked so hard on these projects, and also to Matthew Neal, who's given me the update this morning on the 614, which is very useful for me to find out where we are. And hopefully we can keep moving forward on schemes to be able to put on the shelf and take them on when we get the opportunity. I'm also told that in the very near future, the pinch point funding, it seems like an eternity. We've got a scheme in Mansfield coming around about £2 to £2.5 million in the near future, and I'm expecting that within the first half of this year as well. So fingers crossed. But yes, it's an important paper. It's the future of this county and the infrastructure that comes to it, and I fully support it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, John. I've now got David Martin and then Alan Rhodes. So David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things really. I mean, obviously it's economic growth, and that's what we're talking about, and that's all good. I could just do with a bit more clarification about the £3.2 million Homes England funding sites for Lowmore Road and Caldwell Road. I'm on the local plan working group at Ashfield, and I've not seen anything about that. And also, I'm hoping that in the future we're going to be looking at school places around Hucknall, particularly as a result of the expansion on the Wighay site, and also infrastructure improvements for the A611. So apart from that, I'll be supporting the paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. I'm going to bring Matthew Neal in, but I'll hear Alan Rhodes first. So Matthew, if you could hold yourself in readiness. So Alan.
Yes, thanks, thanks, Kay. This is an important report for all the reasons, and I'm not going to repeat what everybody said, but for all the reasons that people have already said. And of course, the Labour Group will very happily and gladly support this report. I do hope that it will be a precursor to our getting what I regard as our fair share of the levelling up monies that government has promised us. I don't think we've had our fair share in the past, and I'm not trying to score points when I say that. It is a fact that we've been left behind in some respects, and so this is an important paper again for all the reasons that have been said, and we're very happy to support it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alan. I can only agree with you about the fair share, because I think we have been bypassed too many times. And I think working together, we are persuading government, we are working together as a whole area, as a region, as well as our council and neighbouring councils, and that's when we get investment. And I think you're quite right to highlight that. Right, do I have any more speakers before I bring Matt in? No? All right, Matthew Neal then. Would you like to give us an update of where we are?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the specific question around Lowmore and Caldwell, Councillor Martin, we're working very closely with Homes England around bringing forward the infrastructure in relation to those sites, as well as the master planning and the development. And we have been in discussion with colleagues at Ashfield around those developments. So I'm happy to provide a bit more information to you in particular, but it has been a project that's been ongoing for some time.
I think before you go, can you give me an update on the Gedling bypass, Gedling Access Road, which I know has been under construction for quite a long time. How close are we towards this road being in full use? Can you tell me?
It's still on programme, Leader, so still working towards the end of this year, beginning of next in terms of the delivery. So still on target to complete as per the timetable.
Well, that's good to hear that, isn't it? Reg, you reserve the right to speak. Would you like to come in now?
Yeah, not a lot to add. I just think that this strategy, policy and strategy of getting funding in, getting projects shovel ready, I think is the expression, but being in there at the forefront and keep Nottinghamshire under counties, surrounding counties with us, to be right there, because if we don't do it and we don't push as a council, we won't be there, and then we'll be disappointed and say, what happened? Nobody looked after us. Well, we've got to look after ourselves by being at the forefront of all these initiatives to make sure we're there to grasp the funding that's available.
Yeah. So the approval is then for the maximum of £430,000 to support the delivery of the major projects for the period the 1st of April 2021 to the 30th of December 2021, and agree that a request should be submitted to the Finance and Major Contracts Management Committee for the allocation of that £430,000 from contingency to fund the cost of the major projects that are named during this period. And it's set out really on paragraph 3 of the report. So I'm now going to ask the Deputy Chief Executive to move to the vote, please. So over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, members, Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Bonfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fowle.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden.
4.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
And Councillor Vice.
4.
Thanks, members. That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We now move on then to agenda item 7.
Kate, you might want to check your camera. It doesn't seem to be working, your camera.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's shown as being on here. I'll switch it off and start again. Has that worked?
Fine with me. So I don't know what you saw, Richard.
I can see you.
Okay, try again.
Okay, yeah, okay.
You're just the unlucky one then, Richard.
So I would seem, yeah.
Well, we can't see you now, Kay.
You can, yes.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yes.
No. No, you're behind the shield. You can keep talking to us, but you're behind that.
No, I can see it.
It seems, members, that some of us can and others can't.
Hit and miss.
Bit hit and miss. If you do try the large gallery view, then it does seem to work.
I've had problems with that this morning, Adrian, that it wouldn't display to allow me to click on it, but it seems to have kicked in when I rebooted my machine.
See, Richard
it's
Butler's
working
gone
now.
now.
It's okay. The large gallery is working here. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can continue.
Yeah.
That really was a misfortune for you not being able to see me, wasn't it? I do apologise. Right. Let's move on to agenda item 7 then, shall we? This is the zero carbon energy future for the UK and potential sites in Nottinghamshire for energy production. This report seeks approval from the Council to nominate Nottinghamshire sites for consideration in the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority for a new form of energy plant referred to as STEP. It's a bit easier to say than the rest of the sentence. The STEP programme was recently announced as part of the government's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution and the UK's ambition to be the first country in the world to commercialise fusion energy technology. The project will be in the international forefront of the clean energy revolution, bringing visibility to the successive location on the global stage. It's very early days, of course, in the process, but it would be a tremendous boost for Nottinghamshire and the rest of the region if it was secured. The proposal to nominate sites to be submitted has to be the deadline of the 31st of March 2021. So there's absolutely no pressure on us whatsoever then. And following the first round of nomination assessments will be made based on the set of social, commercial and technical criteria, and that will take about 2 years to complete this. On conclusion of this assessment, the UKAEA will make a recommendation to the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy within the successful site announcement towards the end of 2022, and the construction of the plant is due to completed by 2040, which will probably see the next council out as well. So I formally move the recommendations which are on page 48 of the agenda pack, and I'm now going to ask for a seconder, please.
Second that to reserve the right.
Thank you very much. And it's now open for debate. And Alan, you've got your hand up first. Alan
Yes,
Rose.
yes, thank you very much indeed, Kay. I think this is a tremendously exciting opportunity for Nottinghamshire. I won't say that I understand it all. I've had the benefit of a briefing from Adrian, and he certainly was able to explain some of it. But of course, there's an area of expertise that none of us really possess in this particular programme. But look, clean energy is a thing for the future. It is something that we have to turn our minds to. The prospect of Nottinghamshire being at the forefront of this, I think, is something that we should be very proud of. I'm very happy to support this paper and to promote both the sites at Ratcliffe-on-Soar and West Burton A, but I'm afraid that I do have a preference for West Burton A, and I'm not being parochial about that. I mean, people will accuse me of that, and understandably, I'm not necessarily being parochial about it. I just think that in the interests of fairness, and to use that term again that none of us were using 12 months ago, to level up the whole of Nottinghamshire, it'd be great to see that kind of investment in the north of the county, where West Burton A will be decommissioned in September this year. There will sadly be jobs lost, and the community, I know, will very much welcome this. I was at a meeting in Bassetlaw a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this, and somebody described it as sounding like something out of Tomorrow's World, which actually aged him as well. But you know, you've got to be a certain age to know what Tomorrow's World is. But it is. we all remember it. But yeah, it is incredibly exciting, and I do hope that we are successful, that one of our sites will be approved, and that we will see the production of green energy in Nottinghamshire in the future. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. I've got 3 hands up. That's Richard Butler, Muriel Weiss, and then David Martin. So I'll take Richard first.
Thank you, Leader. Well, it's a really interesting report here, and it, as Alan said, it's exciting as well. I mean, we could be at the start of something really big here if we're successful in Nottinghamshire. And at the end of the day, where everyone's talking about energy, the energy has got to come from somewhere, and future generations will be using even more energy when we look towards things like electric cars and all the rest of it. The capacity is not really there at the moment, so it's obviously a long-term thing here, but this is something bright, literally, looking to the future generations of Nottingham, well, of the country and ultimately the world, and with the green energy as well, it's got to be welcomed. So, fingers crossed. Let's hope we are successful with this, and we can't pretend to understand the science completely, but it's not really our job to understand that. But what we are here to do is to ensure that we have got a bright future for the energy, and something that will benefit many people and for many years to come. So yeah, it's really good, really interesting.
Thank you very much, Richard. I've got your hand, Kevin, but I'm now going to call Muriel Weiss, please. Muriel.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes.
Muted. Muriel is muted.
Yeah, just saying what an awesome prospect it is, and very exciting if it could come to Nottinghamshire. I just wonder, in paragraph 6, it talks about one of the benefits being desalination, and does that mean that there are coastal sites that are being considered as well? You know, what kind of competition is there across the country? But yeah, it'd be great if it could come to Nottinghamshire, and obviously develop infrastructure in the north of the county.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before I bring you in, David, I'm going to ask Adrian, are there other sites that you know of in the country, and are there any of them at the coast?
Yes, Leader, indeed, through the engagement we've had with the UK AEA, we're under the impression that there's probably about 12 to 15 sites across the country that would be credible. But the 2 sites that we're putting forward here have all of the kind of characteristics or attributes that the government would need. So we're hopeful that if we put our expression of interests in at the end of this month, that our sites would be taken forward over that next 2-year period. But yes, there are sites both on the coast and inland that are able to bid. But as I say, we've got some very credible opportunities here in the county.
I think I've answered your question, Muriel. So now I've got David Martin, then Kevin Greaves, and then Richard Jackson. So David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Adrian's just answered a couple of my questions there, actually. I mean, it's a long process. It's a big process, and we are lucky to be in that process. And the geographical location of Nottinghamshire makes it all that more important. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Rhodes over the northern site in West Burton A, because obviously there's a hell of a lot going off around Junction 24A and Towton area, Ratcliffe-on-Soar anyway, which that probably would add to the condensing traffic impacts on that area. I think it's a great leap forward in clean green energy, and we've got to embrace it. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, fully supported what everybody has said. I mean, obviously, I am going to be parochial. I will say West Burton, because I mean, there's been jobs losses there, and I mean, the community around Bassetlaw and that area will be overwhelmed with the opportunities that this will bring. High skilled jobs, very high skilled jobs, and other supporting industries also. I mean, Bassetlaw has got good connectivity with the A1, the East Coast Main Line, Doncaster Airport, and the M1, of course. And so, brilliant opportunity, and I'm sure everybody will embrace this opportunity for high skilled jobs to the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Right, I've now got Richard Jackson, and then I've got Tony Harper. So Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to agree really with everybody so far on the opportunity that we've got. It was just a plea at this stage. We shouldn't. We need to keep our options open and keep both sides under consideration, because I think we don't yet know exactly what the government are going to look for and which one of those two sites is going to stand the best chance. And I wouldn't want to see us concentrating on one and to find that the other would have been an option government would have chosen. The other thing I think that's really important here, so the power station itself could generate, pardon the pun, could generate 400 to 500 jobs. Yeah. But I think what we really want out of this is for that power station to be a catalyst for further development and further jobs, probably in a similar connected high-tech industry around the site of the power station or close by. So I think that's actually the golden opportunity. We want to be really ambitious, and we should be looking at thousands of jobs on the back of getting this. So it's absolutely crucial, and very happy to fully support it.
Thank you very much, Richard. And Tony Harper.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Not wanting to repeat what everybody else has said. It's really good for the county, good for jobs, saving jobs. And Richard's just said what I was going to say. Let's not get too parochial with which one. Let's go for both. Let's see which one that we can come up with. As long as it's in Nottinghamshire, that's the important bit. So yeah, fully supportive.
Thank you. And John Peck. You're muted, John. John, you're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Perhaps I shouldn't be commenting on anything scientific. I was a complete dunce at physics at school, and so I can't confess to understanding much of the actual science of this. But what I do understand is that nuclear fusion is the holy grail of energy production, has been for a number of years, and to some extent it's still at the experimental stage rather than at the stage of being in commercial production. But it's good that we've got this paper before us today, and I totally support the idea of putting in a bid or expressing interest and hoping sincerely that this does come to Nottinghamshire. As people have said, it's a great opportunity. I wouldn't really mind which power station site it came to, although my personal preference, as with a few others, is the Burton, West Burton A site. But I think this would be a great opportunity for us to be in the forefront of energy production if it can become commercially viable. And I'm not aware of anywhere in the world where it has yet, but we've got to hope that in the future that does happen. And it would be great for us to be right there at the forefront and in a world-beating potential technology.
Yeah, thank you. And now I have Mike Pringle. Mike.
Thanks, Leila. Just to say, this really puts us in a new era. It's an incredible opportunity for us all, and we'll be completely ignorant to ignore this. A move away from fission in the idea of splitting atoms such as uranium and the dangers that it carries with it, to move into fusion where we actually combine light atoms, a completely different setup. And I think John Peck spoken. This is real utopia power in a green energy way. I think unlike Councillor Jackson, Roger, I would like to know a little bit more of the science. So I'll be interested in reports coming back to back some of the science up so as we understand the operation, because there will obviously be doubts, there's no question about that. But the opportunity, as I understand it, is one that we should absolutely applaud and move forward.
Yeah, there was quite a large article in the Sunday Times 2 Sundays ago on this very type of power, which I thought was really interesting. Sorry, Alan, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, yes, I did. Thank you, Kay. I just wanted to clarify something. I don't want people to go away with the wrong impression. I did say that I support both sites.
Yes.
I have a preference, but I support both sites.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear on that as we go forward. I would be delighted if either of the two sites were chosen. Yeah.
I mean, I have some sympathy with what you're saying, but both sites remain there and both have an equal opportunity, don't they? Equal chance. Is there anybody else would like to contribute to the debate? Right, I'm now going to ask Reg whether you seconded this. Reg, would you like to speak? Do you have anything to add to this?
I don't have a lot to add. It's one of the sites is obviously in my division, so I might be a bit biased there. But at the end of the day, can we get this for Nottinghamshire? And that's the key thing. It's the future, and I probably won't live to see it, but I would like to leave it as a legacy that this is the way forward of green energy for the future generations going forward. And whether it's here in Radcliffe-on-Soar or in West Burton, I'm not too particular because it'll create a lot of jobs, it'll create a lot of new things for a lot of people off that day. And whether it's there or here, the key thing is that it's in Nottinghamshire.
Yeah, I think it's a leap of faith for all of us. None of us really understand the technology. But it's like all of those things which are new and adventurous, that if you don't take these and embrace them, you can't make a step forward. And I think we need to take a step forward. We all of us agree that we need to use energy for the future. And we all of us agree that we need to have a cleaner planet as well. And if this helps towards it, then I'm sure it's the right step in the right direction. So I thank you very much for the confidence you've shown this morning. And I'm now going to move to the vote, which is all set out in the recommendations on page 48 of the agenda pack. And we're voting on to endorse the proposal for the council to act as a nominating body for a submission to the STEP site nominations to the UKEA promoting sites within Nottinghamshire, and subject to the written agreement of the relevant landowners to be included as a site for nomination, and working in collaboration with other relevant stakeholders, delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Place in consultation with the Leader of the Council to approve the recommendations and the final content of the STEP site to be submitted by the 31st of March 2021. It's about, 10 days' time, and agree to receive a further report to consider any implications for the County Council should the nomination be taken a step forward to the next stage within Nottingham, which will be by the UKEA or BAYS, and agree to setting aside the funding requirement of up to £50,000 from the major programmes and delivery work budget. So that's what we're voting on now. So I'm now going to ask the Deputy Chief Executive or the Chief Executive. I've got I'm in embarrassment of wealth here. But one of you, please, to call the register. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. Apologies, colleagues, for my lateness this morning. I'd like to say I've been upstairs brushing up on my physics, but it wouldn't be true. And thank you very much to Adrian for standing in so far. So if I can take the vote, please, starting with Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fold.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Beck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Weiss.
4.
That's carried unanimously, Leader.
Thank you, Chief Executive, and welcome to the meeting. I must say Adrian's done a splendid job in your absence, so perhaps you need to worry slightly. Right, let's move on then to agenda item 8. And we've also have Liz Plant with us for this agenda item 2 as a local member. It's the provision of a replacement primary school, a new secondary school for West Bridgford, and the expansion of the Rushcliffe School. So I'm now going to ask Philip Owen, please, as the Chairman of the Children's Committee, to introduce this report.
Right, thank you, Leader. This report is a very important one as far as school provision is concerned in the West Bridgford area. As you can see from the report, there are three facets to it. One is a replacement on a new site for the Lady Bay Primary School. Those of you that are familiar with the Lady Bay Primary School will know that in terms of the buildings, I think it's perhaps past its sell-by date. There are porter cabins, temporary, laughingly called temporary buildings on site. And I'm always of the view that temporary buildings should be just that, an opportunity to perhaps see through a bulge year or a bulge couple of years, and then they should be removed and the school should simply be operating from the actual school buildings. Well, this has not been the case at Lady Bay. These temporary buildings have been there for a long, long time, and it's clear that the school needs additional capacity. The building, the actual physical building itself, is a listed building, and listed buildings are all well and good, but they're not necessarily fit for purpose. And certainly, I don't think that this building is really fit for purpose to deliver a curriculum that's designed for the 21st century. So it really does need a replacement school, which is proposed in this report. The second element is to build a new secondary school. Now, we were musing on Monday at the Children's Committee as to when was the last time a new secondary school had been built by the County Council in Nottinghamshire. I had, of course, forgotten at that time the new Southers School in Newark, but that is not one that we were responsible for. That was outside of our control. But as far as the County Council is concerned, I think it must be at least 50 years or more since we actually built a new school rather than replace old buildings. And this is very much needed because of the expansion of West Bridgford and the need for additional school places. And coupled with that is the proposal to expand further Rushcliffe School, which of course is under pressure in terms of school places. So this report encapsulates all three of those particular facets of additional provision and replacement provision in the West Bridgford area. And I think it's a blueprint very much for the future development of West Bridgford and for the young people of West Bridgford. And I'm happy to move the recommendations that are set out in the report. Thank you, Leader.
And I formally second those recommendations and reserve the right to speak. Can I just say, I think the last school we built was the Rushcliffe School, actually. And I think that was probably in the early 70s when we were developing the joint use provision as well with the district council. So I'm sorry to not quite 50 years ago, Philip. Right now, who'd like to speak to this? Liz, would you like to come in now? Would you prefer to wait until you've heard your colleagues?
No, I'll come in now if I can, Leader.
Thank you very much then, Liz. Councillor Liz Plant, local member, and then I have John Peck.
Yes, and obviously, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking to really the recommendation 1, the approval in principle of the relocation of Lady Bay Primary School to a new campus at Site D, Regatta Way, alongside a third secondary school for West Bridgford, subject to further survey and design works. If these schools go ahead at the proposed site, yes, they will be built in Councillor Cutt's division, but of course the impact of this decision will be on the children, the families and the wider community in the immediate vicinity, that is Lady Bay and the wider West Bridgford planning area. West Bridgford, as we all know, is an extremely popular place to live, and much of that is due to the good and outstanding schools in the area. But there can't be a parent in the West Bridgford planning area that doesn't agree there's a need to expand provision of school places at both primary and secondary level. West Bridgford has seen a huge expansion in housing over the past 10 years, and with very much more still to come. At the recent secondary day offer, many more families did not secure their catchment place at West Bridgford Comp or Rushcliffe School, which makes a child's transfer to secondary school much more stressful if they don't attend their catchment secondary school with their friends from their primary school and have to travel to another secondary school somewhere in Rushcliffe. Many parents undoubtedly agree that Lady Bay, again, a good school providing excellent education, is a building that is unfit for purpose in the 21st century. Part of the school is a Grade 2 listed building and is over 100 years old. The classrooms are too small, the outside play area is too small, and the building costs a great deal to heat, light and maintain. The school field and green space is over 10 minutes walk away, and if you are a foundation stage pupil with little legs, probably a lot longer. A rebuild is necessary, if not essential. However, some residents in the Lady Bay area have real concerns about the suitability of the site that Policy Committee is seeking approval in principle for today, and I want to share those concerns with the committee. The feasibility study agreed by Policy Committee last year at a cost of £445,000 has decided that Site D on Regatta Way is the appropriate site for the rebuild of Lady Bay Primary School and the much needed third secondary school. Quite amazingly, this was the site that was talked about before the feasibility study actually took place. There is no real transparency as to why the other sites were discounted, and no real explanation as to why a site on the floodplain, parts of which flood on a regular basis, is deemed to be the most appropriate. Interestingly, paragraph 14 mentions, inverted commas now, special circumstances that require the building of the new schools of this site, but it doesn't go into any detail about what those special circumstances are. And a further £500,000 is now required for further design work. There has been no consultation or dialogue with the community to date. For many parents and residents, the first they heard of the County Council's proposed plans was on West Bridgeford Wire, which means rumours and misunderstandings are rampant within the community, and this is a real issue and needs addressing. Residents are also concerned about what would become of the Lady Bay school site in the heart of the community if the school is to be built elsewhere. The proposed site on Regatta Way is considerably farther away from Lady Bay, with poor pavement provision, no segregated safe cycle paths, and the Regatta Way is a very busy road where drivers constantly disregard the speed limit of 40 miles an hour. For myself, I can see an exciting opportunity for the County Council to plan, design and influence education provision in the West Bridgeford planning area with the building of this third secondary school and the much needed rebuild of Lady Bay Primary. A brand new secondary school has not been built, as we've discussed, and we can't really decide in the county for many, many years, and certainly getting on for 50. It is a truly unique opportunity to build a school to the highest environmental and sustainable standards, one that involves pupils, teachers, and the wider community in that design going forward, and most importantly, is on the most appropriate site. We all know that nothing as regards planning matters is ever simple. I want, and I'm sure all members on the committee want, the best possible education outcomes for the children, parents and the community of Lady Bay and the wider West Bridgeford planning area. And that undoubtedly means a new primary school fit for the 21st century, and for parents to be confident that their child can transfer seamlessly from the primary school to their catchment secondary school with their primary school friends. In order to help achieve this, I can't emphasise enough the importance of communicating to and engaging with the local community at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and very well said. Before I have John Peck and then Alan Rhodes, I'm going to ask, please, for Matt Neal, who's been part of the site search for this, to refer us to the yellow plan, which is with your papers today. For those of us who know the area well, can I point out that sites E, F, G and H are all across the Lings Bar Road, which is the A52, which is a trunk road, of course, belongs to Highways England, and there is no easy way to get there except the current access from Tollerton Lane, which has had 3 fatal accidents already. So, Matt, can you come in and just talk about the other sites, please?
Thank you, Leader. So we looked at all of the sites. I think just to add that some of those sites were in private ownership, so that also was a contributory factor in terms of how we decided on the site for the report. In terms of sites A and B, with regard to the new campus development, which is what we are looking to achieve here, both would not be able to accommodate a site on that scale, and of course both are closer to and more further within the floodplain. Hence the recommendation within the report for site D, but also that we looked at both sides of Regatta Way as well for this opportunity. And why we are looking at site D. The special circumstances that Councillor Plant refers to are around the fact that we do need a school, that we have got the shortage of school places. So all of the things that Councillor Plant has referred to earlier. So hopefully that answers your question, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's useful information. So now, please, could I have John Peck and then Alan Rhodes? So John first.
Yes, I mean, it's absolutely certain that there needs to be a new secondary school and a primary school in West Bridgford. We all know that West Bridgford is a hot spot as far as pupil places is concerned, and has been for a long time, and will be for some time to come, I believe. I defer to Councillor Plant, who is obviously the local member and knows the area well and knows her community well. So I'm sure all the points that she's made are valid ones, and those that she's raised, I think, certainly need addressing. Having said that, I just wanted to offer a secondary school that we have built within the last 50 years. I don't know whether there might be any other offers, but how about Rufford Secondary School, built 43 years ago in 1978, at the same time as my school, Peafield Lane, was built, and we fed into Rufford School. Rufford School was actually 300 yards from where I'm sitting at the moment, close to my house, but was sadly closed down 20 years ago, so it wasn't in existence very long, but we did build it as a brand new school only 43 years ago, Chair.
Right, so we might have more bids on this. John, thank you for the history lesson. Right, can I now bring in Alan Rhodes, please? Alan.
Yes, thank you, Kay, thank you. I wouldn't want anyone to go away thinking that in principle we didn't support the provision of new school places in West Bridgford, a growing community, a very popular community to live in and grow up in, and it's entirely understandable that there is a great deal of pressure on school places. So we support that. I won't pretend that I know the area well, I don't, but I do listen particularly to Liz Plant, who is always measured and constructive in her comments and has been this morning. I think Liz is speaking on behalf of her community about the genuine concerns about whether the Regatta Way site is the correct site for this school. And as is often has been said, I'm not getting into whether it's 50 years or 40 years or whatever it is, but you don't build a new school very often. And when you do, you need to make sure it's in the right place, got the right site, and it's offering the right kind of provision. You can't afford to get it wrong. I'm concerned about the flooding aspect of the Regatta Way site. I do hope that the fact that we own it isn't a driving factor, and that is overriding what may be other concerns. I do hope that if we were buying the Regatta Way site and not owning it, we'd still build a school on it. I think we need to ask ourselves that question. If it wasn't ours, would we still want to build on it? And I think also there are other considerations. As I said earlier, I don't know the area, so I'm not speaking with any personal knowledge, shall I say, but I am told that it's from the existing Lady Bay School, which I accept is a very old building, and I'm not I'm not making any point about that, but it's a 15 to 20-minute walk to the proposed new site. It's a long way for people to walk with children. That then suggests to me that we're going to see an increase in traffic movement, an increase in air pollution. Do we really think that it's a good thing to have a 5-year-old on the same school site as an 18-year-old? Is that really what we want? So there's all sorts of questions, I think, about this particular site and about these proposals. We will support it in principle for all the reasons that Liz and John and I have just made. There's a need for school provision, for more school provision in the West Bridgford area. So to not support it will be folly. But I think it is a fair thing to ask ourselves to be absolutely sure that we're going in the right direction here, and that we may or may not need to revisit that decision. But I do think there are fair questions to be asked. Thanks very much for listening to me, Chair.
I think they are very fair questions to ask, and just refer to the plan again. County Council actually owns both sites C and D. They're both in my division, actually. Site C floods, and it has a water course going through the centre of it. Site D, I went down the last flood. Now, we've had so many floods recently, I'm hard pressed to remember exactly when it was. I think it was post-Christmas, and I went to look at all the sites around there, and Site D was not flooded. But I have to tell you that the sites on F was the one on the other side of the Gamston Lings Bar. So the water table there, as you might imagine, with the Trent being there, behaves in a particular way. But where there's a water course going through, that probably does add to the flooding problems there. And I actually took the opportunity to contact the officers when I'd been down there and said what I'd actually seen with my own eyes. I should have taken a photograph, Alan. So right now I've got Kate and then Reg. So Kate Fowle first, please.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Again, clearly children in West Bridgford deserve good school places in a fit for purpose school. So clearly we must all support this. I do understand that, but it is a site that concerns me. And just again, we've been talking about a historical perspective. I know that this site has been considered for a new school build for decades for different schools over the years. I know that because of the work that my husband used to do. Yes. So presumably the site has been surveyed, the feasibility has been done several times in relatively recent history and turned down for a school. Yeah. And I just wonder whether that, and I am concerned that might have been because of the flooding issue. And I mean, we've all read in stories. I'm no expert. But we've all read in kind of stories and about when there is increased pressure with more house building, with more roads built, which is happening in West Bridgford, that actually that can sometimes have unintended consequences on flooding. And if you're going to build a school like this with a lot of extra traffic, in fact 2 schools, I just wonder if the flood risk has really, really seriously been looked at, and if so, why has it been turned down in the past? Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Can I say I've represented this area for 32 years. There's no school that's been proposed there and turned down, I can assure you. Right, I've got Reg now to come in. Reg.
I think this paper is very, very important to us. And I'm talking now for capacity for children. I've got some of my residents in Ruddington who are really desperate for school places, secondary school places and all the rest of it. And, you know, it's our duty, I feel it's my duty to merely make sure that there's capacity available of secondary style to accommodate families. We're expanding the families, the developments. I was just counting up the other day in Ruddington alone, we've had about 500 houses. And getting the capacity for secondary schools there, you know, we haven't done enough in the past. And I think here we've got to really, really take a big step forward to create the capacity that's needed for families for the next 25, 30, 40 years or whatever it is to ensure we do it. And we need to do that at Rushcliffe, because that hasn't been expanded enough to take the capacity there. And that's not just Ruddington, that's all that surrounding and catchment area. There's not enough there. And then there's West Bridgford. If we can get the school in West Bridgford up and running, then that will assist the capacity at the Rushcliffe School and the other West Bridgeford School. So this is so important, really is so important. We should have been doing this 5 years ago instead of talking about it today. And, you know, we really, really have let the families down around my area over that period of time by not 5 or 6 years ago taking this decision and now having a school that we should be celebrating the opening of instead of talking about should we put it here, should we put it there, and keeping school children at primary level in porta cabins in 2021. I think that's disgraceful for us, and I think we really, really need to get our heads around it and get thinking forward, and our next generations that follow us has a decent place, and the young families that follow us have a decent place for their children to be educated and grow up in this world. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fred. And of course, you didn't explain to those who might not know that the children from Ruddington, their natural catchment area is to the West Bridgeford schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Right, I've got Chris Barnfather next, and then Bruce, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, the answer is in the report, and I think every speaker so far has quite rightly identified that there is a pressing need for both primary and secondary additional capacity within the West Bridgeford area. In paragraph 6 in the report, when you look at the potential shortage of primary places of 115 places within a 3-year period, 816 secondary places within that same 3-year period. Clearly, we have to plan now. I think Councillor Adair has very comprehensively made that point. We have to plan now to make sure that we're able to accommodate that provision at that point. I understand that people will have an attachment to a school that many of their generations will have gone to within the current West Bridgeford Primary School. But you know, the reality of it is we have to plan ahead. We have to plan for 3 years' time. There is no other suitable site within the West Bridgeford area. I know that officers have considered all possible alternatives, and this is the nearest site that will be able to accommodate that would actually meet the requirements in size in terms of both size. In terms of both size.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can you mute yourself unless you're speaking? So Chris.
Sorry, in terms of both sides, in terms of accessibility to the community and the catchment that it will be intended to serve. And I have every confidence in planning officers. When they consider this application, they will determine, as they would determine any application that comes before the planning committee. If there are concerns about flooding, those issues would be addressed. There would be a recommendation to refuse. If this site is appropriate, there will be a recommendation to approve. I think we have to have confidence in the officers that have actually done the site assessment, and we have to have equal confidence in the planning officers who will determine any application that comes before them and then onwards to the planning committee in due course. So I fully support the application.
Thank you very much.
Can I apologise to Chris? It was my fault that there was an interruption. I thought I'd turned the microphone off when my lad came back from the vet, and so it was all a bit exciting here. I'm sorry about that, Chris.
Well,
I understand your son being excited at me speaking, Alan. It's only
it was a dog, not my son.
we all caught sight of your pretty little dog, Alan, so thank you for the explanation.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I've now got Bruce to speak and then David Martin. So Bruce.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. I find it quite interesting hearing Councillor Peck's view on Rufford School. It was a retrograde step and the wrong decision for the residents I represent in Bilthorpe, and also for the residents of Edwinstowe, closing Rufford School, which was a high-performing, excellent facility. And I was a part of the Save Rufford School campaign. In fact, I taught at Rufford School. And so I'm pleased he's admitted that it was a mistake to close that school. Thank you, Leader.
Can I remind you that it was the Labour group that closed it down and not ours? So just for the record.
I opposed it.
Yeah. Let's end the history lessons now, and if we can move forward. So David Martin, please, you're the next to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean,
I would never take the officer's decision lightly, and I think they're very much more adept at fixing the problem than people give them credit for sometimes. And I think the location that they've chosen is very accessible. And let's face it, most parents travel to school by car anyway, especially secondary school parents. And what I'm really interested to see is that, especially from Councillor Adair, recognising the fact that we haven't done enough in the past, looking forwards. And this is why I keep beating the drum about Wighay development in Hucknall, because there have been around about 3,000 properties built in Hucknall over the last 5 years, and that will take the volume up to about 4,000. So I really want to look forward to a programme of further education across Hucknall, secondary education. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I have John Cotty's hand up. John.
Thank you, Leader. I'm not going to repeat what's been said, but it's a great opportunity as well as having new schools of being able to build into the design how pupils are dropped off and how they're taken there and what infrastructure we can put in to help going forward. I don't think there's a problem. There is a bus service we can look at. We can make sure that people can get there. I think it has all the right connectivity for the people who are working for us to design in what we know is a problem at other schools that they won't have. So I think it's really positive, and I accept what others have said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Are there any other speakers? Well, to be sure of where we are with this, I proposed it and Philip seconded it and introduced the item. Before I bring Philip in again, is there anything else anybody wishes to ask? Right, so Philip Earn, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think the Labour Party are really damning us with faint praise. I understand the political dilemma that they find themselves in, but that shouldn't prevent us from going forward and providing first-rate facilities for our young people. I know there was procrastination over Carlton Digby and we had to sort that out. There was procrastination over the Orchard School and we had to sort that out. And we don't want procrastination over this particular issue, and we need to get it sorted. I think Councillor Plant really destroyed her own argument about the relocation of the Lady Bay School when she said there are insufficient outdoor play spaces. Well, if you've got a site that's so constrained, you can't simply do a rebuild when you've got inadequate play facilities and outdoor spaces. So clearly it needs to be relocated. And I think it was Councillor Rhodes that says that it needs to be in the right place, the right site. You've already elaborated, Leader, on the fact that this particular site doesn't flood. And that's been a red herring that's been thrown into the pot by one or two objectors. And I think Councillor Rhodes went on to say about mixing a 5-year-old and an 18-year-old on the same site. We'd been doing that for donkey's years up at Selby Park, up in the north of the county, which I think was at its height a 3 to 18 school. And if you read the report that's in front of you, you'll see that the two schools would be completely separate units. So there's no danger, no safeguarding issues that haven't been considered. I think we need to get on with this. The idea of a feasibility study is to come forward with a suggested site, and then, as Councillor Barnfather has outlined, we'll go through the full consultation process. You don't go around saying, where would you like a new school being built? And then start your feasibility studies. You come up with a feasibility study and say, we think this is the best site for a variety of reasons. Let's put in the planning application, demonstrate the special circumstances, because I don't know whether this has been taken out of Greenbelt, but if it's still in Greenbelt, then you do need to demonstrate very special circumstances. And the very special circumstances are that we need a new school, two new schools in that area for primary and secondary education for the benefit of young people who will be moving into West Bridgford in the future for a 21st century education. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, one we should grasp and celebrate all the way across the political spectrum. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Philip. But can I thank you all for a well-balanced and reasonable debate today. This is a feasibility study which will answer a lot of the queries that have been made. And so the recommendations are that the committee approves in principle the relocation of the Lady Bay Primary School to a new campus on Site D at Regatta Way, alongside a third secondary school for West Bridgford, subject to further survey and design works. A further report be brought back to the committee following completion of the survey and design work, outlining progress to date and seeking further funding for the next design stages to enable the submission of a planning application. That a further £500,000 be allocated to ensure that a further design development of the new secondary school, West Bridgford and Lady Bay Primary School, and that subject to the agreement of the Service Director, investment and growth around the final decision, final design and the cost of the Rushcliffe School approval be given for the Council to enter into a grant funding agreement to provide an additional £480,000 for the Spencer Academy Trust for the purpose of submitting a planning application. So there are three things we're doing here. We are the further money for the expansion of the Rushcliffe School to take in those extra places required now, and two further schools to be built, Lady Bay Primary and the third secondary school in West Bridgford. That is what we're voting on today, and the feasibility study for those. So I'm now going to hand this over to the Chief Executive and ask him to call the register, if you would, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Cutts. Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Weiss.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, members, for the confidence to go forward to the next stage. And it's really important the next stage answers all the questions that have been raised today. And can I thank your Councillor Liz Plant for coming along and representing your community so well. Thank you very much, Liz. Let's now move on then, please, to agenda item 9, which is a proposed lease of the North Worksop Children's Centre, Rhodesia site. Just turn my pages over, just give me a moment. This, I know, has been discussed by the Children's Committee. I am going to propose this, and I'm going to ask Philip Owen to second this, please, as it's been through his committee already. So can I first of all bring Philip Owen in?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second the proposal and perhaps reserve my right to speak at this point. I think you've got the local member who would like to comment, and then I'm happy to pick up afterwards, if that's all right.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have with us today, we have Sybil Fielding, who's a local member. Sybil, you are very welcome to the meeting. And if you would like to give us your view of this, please, I'd be happy to hear you now.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak at committee today. I note the purpose of this report is to approve the changes to the use of the North Worksop Children's Centre on the Rhodesia site to enable it to be signed off to the local school academy for the next 125 years. I am deeply disappointed with not only the decision itself, but also with the way that it has been made and the facts that have been presented at the various committees to which this issue has been brought. There is no doubt in my mind that the withdrawal of universal early intervention services across the county has left children and young families in a much worse off situation. The shift from a universal service provision to a targeted one back in 2018 was where all this began. This led to a reduction in all centres, including this one in my division, being unable to be utilised by families generally. Since then, health professions, early intervention services and play equipment have all been moved out of the Children's Centre in Rhodesia, meaning there is little left to attract young families to the centre. For the record, I will remind all members that Rhodesia lies in the third most deprived centile in the country and borders the most deprived centiles, according to the Index of Multiple Deprivation, and that many of families in my division do not have access to a vehicle to enable them to make journeys to other children's centres in Worksop. The consultation process itself has failed to address either of these issues. It's also failed to ascertain local views. It has admitted several key local consultees, including myself as the local member. But worse than that, it's not even attempted to identify the actual needs of the children or young people and their families in Rhodesia. Let me be clear, I welcome the fact that Haggenfield Primary School are keen to expand provision at the centre to meet the needs of local children, but I'm reliably informed that the provision might be offered to children aged 2 and older. I draw your attention to the Early Years Foundation stage, which is a national framework setting out standards for learning, development and care of children from birth to 5 years old. We know that the first 1,000 years of a child's life, from conception to the age 2, are a critical phase during which foundations of a child's development are laid. The right support for pregnant women and the right support for early days of a child's life are critical. This is widely accepted fact, but it's particularly pertinent in an area where there are notable social inequalities, as I have consistently highlighted. That's what our children's centres were established for, to support pregnant women, to support young families and young children, and to ensure that any difficulties could be addressed at an early stage as possible, and attempt to address inequalities from the very beginning of life. The report presented today does not provide me with any confidence that this council has considered any of these issues at all, and I fear that this administration is failing the young children and families in Rhodesia. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Before I open the meeting for debate, can I say the report seeks approval to approve the grant of a lease to the North Worksop Children's Centre, Nottingham and Southwold Diocese Multi-Academy Trust. At its meeting on the 22nd of February, the Children and Young People's Committee supported the proposal for a change of use for the property for the use by Haggenfield's Primary and Nursery School, and referred this matter to this committee for consideration. And the benefits of this proposal are outlined in the report and are expanding education provision at the school, meeting the needs of local children, releasing space in the school to improve learning outcomes, greater use of the property and reduced building expenditure. Historically, there has been a low footfall at Rhodesia site, and it's been consistently hard to encourage parents to attend. Prior to the pandemic, the centre only operated 1 2-hour session per week, and it's now considered beneficial that the adjacent Haggenfields Primary and Nursery School take over the building, providing more benefits to local children, with the children-centred services being delivered in the family homes through virtual platforms in a more targeted manner. So we're not withdrawing that service, it's going to be delivered differently. The school is occupied under a 125-year academy lease, and it is proposed that the proposed lease of the Children's Centre will be coterminous with this. Legal consultation took place on the Council's online consultation hub for 6 weeks from the 7th of December 2020 to the 18th of January 2021. All 4 of the responses were in favour of the building being taken over by the Haggenfields Primary and Nursery School, who were also keen to do so. And we are recommending to the committee to grant the lease from the 31st of January to 2145 the North Worksop Children's Centre to the Nottingham Southwold Diocese Multi-Academy Trust, as indicated edge black on the attached plan. And the attached plan shows the proximity of the buildings together with the school that we are using. And of course, there was a former private nursery school on the site, which withdrew. And as far as I can see, that hasn't been replaced. So now, thank you, Sybil, very much for your contribution. I'm now going to bring Alan Rhodes in, please. So, Alan.
Thanks very much, Kay. I am speaking in support of what Sybil has just outlined to the committee. I believe that as a member of this council should be treated shabbily in the way that this decision has been reached. I know Rhodesia, it is a very disadvantaged community, probably one of the most disadvantaged communities in the county. I know it well because I represented it when I first got elected as a councillor in 1986. And I've got a great deal of affection for that community and the people in it because they are good people. I don't think this is the best decision to have taken. I'm going to take a couple of quotes from the report where in paragraph 4 it says it's been consistently hard to encourage people to attend. That's not a reason to close or get rid of a children's centre. If it's consistently hard, try harder and keep trying, because if there are only children's centres in areas where it's easy to get parents to attend, frankly, the whole point of children's centres will have been missed. And that is to provide much needed early years and parental support to people in some of our most disadvantaged communities. I also note in the report a sentence that I pointed out to the Chief Executive the other day, that some children's centres do not evidence value for money. Well, here's a surprise. They were never intended to be profitable. They're intended to provide, again, a much needed service. The way that this decision's been arrived at is deeply unsatisfactory. Councillor Fielding was excluded as an elected representative of that community from the discussions around the decision. When she raised it, she was told that it was expected that the school would inform her. It's never been the job of a school to inform a member of the county council about a decision that the county council is about to take. The consultation was unsatisfactory. Only 4 responses, and the decision was taken on the basis of 4 responses. Well, clearly those 4 responses told the council what they wanted to hear. That box was ticked, and it meant that they could go ahead. My view is, and I would have said this if I was the portfolio holder or the leader of the council, my view is that this consultation should have been rerun, because it doesn't have any credibility when there are only 4 people responding. If you only get 4 next time, well, you know, there's not much you can do about that. Then you have to go ahead. But, you know, when there are only 4 respondees to a consultation, and it was held over a Christmas period, but I do recognise that it was extended to the 18th of January, so I don't think there's too much can be said about that. But 4 responses to a consultation does not make, in my opinion, for a credible consultation, and one from which you can go ahead and make a decision. And the final thing, really, Chair, is that there is no guarantee from the school that children's centre services will continue to be provided. In fact, the school can, as far as I know, can use that space for whatever activity it deems suitable for that school, which means that that community will have lost its children's centre services. I would have liked to have seen those services continue, albeit underused, and I'd like to have seen more and more. And by the way, you might not know if you don't know the area, and I don't suppose everybody does, that is a growing community in itself as well. There's a lot of new build around there, as Sybil will tell you. So there was potential actually for a growth in children's centre usage as more young families move into the area. I think it was the wrong decision. I think it was a decision that was poorly executed, and I think it's a shame that we've got to the situation that we've got to. We can't support this report because we don't believe that the right decision's been arrived at, Chair. So thank you again for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Alan. Before I bring you in, Muriel, can I formally apologise to you, Sybil? If you were excluded from this decision, I am very sorry. I can assure you that no administration I would lead had any right to exclude any properly elected member. And if you were overlooked, I can see how hurtful and annoying that would be. So I do apologise for that. Right, let's now go to Kate Muriel, who has her hand up. So Muriel.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very, very disappointing report, and I suppose one or two of the things I'm going to say just echo what both Sybil and Alan have already said. But as chair of the Children's Fund back in the Nottinghamshire Children's Fund back in the late 80s, I was part of the decisions for funding to open up centres like Rhodesia, with a vision of involvement of parents to be part of the shaping of the centre, to have access for the local community, so that within that universal access, parents, both parents who were struggling, would be able to come in an unstigmatised way to be involved in activities, and then within that setting for all the shortfall in children's developments like speech therapy and so on, and reading to children and so on, they could all be offered in an unstigmatised way. I mean, I thought the ethos of this county had moved from saying people were hard to reach to saying people are seldom heard. But this seems to fly completely in the face of that kind of ethos. Paragraph 6 sums up the whole range of issues with this. The fact that the Rhodesia project was operating at only 1 2-hour session. In many children's centres, the pathways into the centre and the criteria for children and parents accessing them has become so restrictive. And as Sybil said, the withdrawal of regular programme of activities that the parents who are struggling to get perhaps any regular pattern to their week can just turn up and there's something interesting and helpful that's been provided. Just have to remember whether the centre is open on a particular day in a particular week with a particular activity, and the only pathway is through schools. Just is a recipe for the centres becoming less used and less accessible. It talks about the children's centre having a more targeted approach. I mean, that's been the problem for many centres, that it's become too targeted, and the criteria for use of the centres has just become too restrictive. The possibility that these activities can go on in family homes and whatever virtual platforms are is in many communities completely unrealistic. Many parents don't want officials coming into their homes because they just see it as exposing themselves and any difficulties in their home, exposing them to criticism and judgment. It's much easier to go to a welcoming centre where other parents go, where you can eventually perhaps become a volunteer yourself. All of that is much more attractive to people than having to be in a position to welcome visitors into your home. Having the centre is the attraction. And finally, I think as one of the previous speakers said, there's no assurance that the academy will reach out in a more effective way to parents and children. There's no programme for that. There's no evidence at all. So I think this whole issue needs to be reconsidered, and the concept of a welcoming children's centre that's there for a variety of families just needs to be refreshed with a strong commitment by the County Council.
Can I draw your attention to paragraph 10? Paragraph 10 talks about how the service will continue to be delivered, schools and family homes. It also says that a face-to-face service will continue to be available in children's centre services in Worksop, including Manton, Prospect Kilton, North Worksop. And there's no planned reduction in the delivery of the service, and that I can assure you there is no planned reduction. And for such a small footfall, it can be delivered differently, and probably this an extension of the school will make it available to more children rather than fewer children. So,
sorry, Chair, I forgot to address that issue, because the strength of this children's centre is its locality. Parents and children won't necessarily either choose or be able to travel to those other centres. Now, I omitted to say that in my concerns.
Which, of course, is why we've been delivering it virtually during the year when we've had the COVID pandemic. I now have Kate Foles' hand up, and then Richard Jackson. So, Kate.
Hi. Can you hear? I'm having some connectivity problems. Can you hear me okay?
I can't see you any longer, but I can hear you.
Okay, well, that's okay, fine. Just to support what Sybil and others have been saying, I think in many reports that have come to committee, you have said that you see urgent in helping vulnerable families, to keeping them into kind of a worse situation. That's what children's centres were set up to provide. Sure Start, they were set up to provide good early start for our children and for our families. And I have to say that the idea that actually you reduce the offer, as Sybil was saying, from universal offer, then fewer people use the centre. Oh, fewer people use the centre, so we can close it. It's disingenuous. In my division, in Beeston, and Muriel's carefully pointed out, a lot of these families at Newport will not come to a children's centre. It's there, it's open regularly, it's friendly, it has the right surroundings. You can't do that on an individual basis, and on an individual, it doesn't work. So I just feel very strongly that actually we really can't support this, and that the whole idea of a children's centre has been completely lost, and I think that's a real shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. You were breaking up a little bit there, but I think we got the main gist of what you were saying. So now, Richard Jackson, your speak.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I mean, up until the second part of what Muriel was saying, the conversation has been entirely about the property rather than about the service, which is what's important to us at the end of the day. And I did listen to what Muriel had to say, but I'm afraid that the footfall figures and the usage figures don't bear it out. So to say that people want to have an accessible centre that's local to them to go to, that's welcoming, because they don't want the outreach service, just isn't borne out by the fact, because it's not happening. So for whatever reason, people aren't engaging with the centre. So I think it's quite right that we look at it. It's £14,000 a year to run a centre that people aren't coming to. I'd much rather we spent that on the service and on getting out. If there's a problem with getting people into the centre, we need to identify those people and we need to come to them, or to meet them somewhere else. But just trying to continue with a centre that isn't being used, that's a huge financial drain. You know, there's only one budget to deliver this service, and the costs of property have to come out of that budget. And so every penny we spend on property that's not necessary is pennies that aren't being spent on actually delivering the service. And I do take exception to Councillor Rhodes quoted very, very selectively a part of paragraph 17 in the report, where he said, as it says in the report, some children's centres do not evidence value for money. He didn't go on to quote the very next sentence in the report that says, in order to deliver the targeted approach introduced several years ago, engaging the most vulnerable families and increasing opportunities for enhanced home learning. That's what we want to do. So no, quote from the report, but quote it in context, because this is not, as paragraph 10 spells out, this isn't about reducing a service at all. Quite the opposite. It's about focusing and really targeting the service on people for whatever reason who aren't using the children's centre as it is today. So I fully support this report, Chairman, and I'm disappointed that others won't.
Thank you, Richard. Now I've got John Peck's hand up. So, John.
Yes, I want to support Councillor Fielding and the comments that she made, both at this committee and at the Children and Young People's Committee, where the report there was narrowly won by your group, and I've no doubt it will be today. But Rhodesia is precisely the kind of area where the kind of provision offered by a children's centre is absolutely required. And it's those young families and those pregnant mothers that need the kind of support that is offered. I hear a lot about buildings aren't necessary to provide that support, and that we can target support in a different way. I'm entirely unconvinced by the notion that targeted support is the only route to go down. And I think buildings certainly have their place as well for young mothers and families to come together to receive all the kinds of provision that they need in those crucial early years prior to the child starting to school. And I totally endorse the comments that have been made by Councillor Rhodes and others, that I just simply think that this has been allowed to wither on the vine, and not nearly enough effort has been put into making a bigger effort to provide the kind of services that people want and need in that area, and making better use of the resource. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it away. Another public resource given away to an academy chain. It's 125 years lease, but that's giving it to them, isn't it? I mean, it's a freebie, and there's no guarantee whatsoever as to what use they're going to put it to in the future, whatever they might say at the moment. And I'm not disparaging Hagenfield's primary school, far from it. Very good school, offering excellent community education provision in the Rhodesia area. But what we're doing here is, I think, depriving that community of a much needed resource. We're not making a go of it. We haven't made a go of it. I think this is an expedient decision. As I say, it's been allowed to wither for some considerable time. Councillor Jackson talks about £14,000. I mean, for heaven's sake, that's chicken feed, isn't it? Absolute chicken feed. So he's making a big thing of £14,000. I don't know what proportion that is of the county council's budget, but it's negligible. So I don't think we should be looking at the financial issue here at all, but should be looking at the quality of services that are provided in the area. And I just don't think we've made enough effort to provide the kind of provision that is needed. I just don't think you're going to give a similar service by so-called targeted meeting families in their home or whatever. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive anyway. You should be doing both. So I'm extremely disappointed with the decision. We're giving away yet another community facility, and I know there's no chance today of winning the vote. We can only put the arguments. Great shame, but there we are. And sadly, I don't think we'll see the last of this.
I think to the point you raised really on the budget, it's isn't 14,000 out of the county council's budget. It's £14,000 out of the children's service budget for this budget head. That's actually a larger proportion than you would believe. It's not really chicken feed at all. Do I have any more speakers, please? No. Could I ask, please, Colin Pettigrew, if you're there, Colin is the Director of Children's Service, to come in. And are there any points you think need covering before I go back to Philip Owen? So, Colin.
Thank you, Lida, for the opportunity to speak. And I would want to say a couple of things. Much has been said with regards to the consultation. Yeah, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to clarify some of that. The consultation was required to take place for 2 weeks. Yeah, it did, in fact, I think, as has been acknowledged, took place for 2 weeks before the Christmas break, 2 weeks during the Christmas break, and 2 weeks after the Christmas break. So we took 6 weeks rather than 2 weeks to consult. The consultation was on the local authorities hub for those 6 weeks, from the 7th of December to the 18th of January. Due to COVID, we couldn't carry out any face-to-face sessions. That wouldn't have been legal. So we extended that from 2 to 6 weeks. The school helped publicise it on their website, both in their news section and setting up a separate page with more information. The school also printed out the questionnaire to be collected by parents who wanted to complete a paper copy. Indeed, that's where the 4 consultees came from, I understand. The Children's Centre staff contacted every single family who were registered with them to give them the link to the consultation and to offer them to print off a questionnaire if they wished to, if they didn't want to use the online version. So we mitigated that risk of any suggestion around digital disadvantage. And one of the children's service, one of the team, who's also a Rhodesia parent and resident, also publicised the link to the consultation through informal networks, including a local Facebook page. Members of the team also advised the Healthy Families teams and the midwifery service, asking them to complete the questionnaire and promote it to their local families. And the Early Childhood Service also contacted local district and county councillors and sent it to other services who use the building for their views. I'm, as Director of Children's Services, confident that this was a consultation that was thorough, and indeed went beyond and took mitigating circumstances under its mitigating arrangements under the COVID circumstances.
Thank you, Colin.
I would just, as a point of accuracy, the last judgment for Hagenfield School, was inadequate rather than a very good school, which is why it has become part of a multi-academy trust, transferred to the trust as an inadequate school. We hope that multi-academy trust will improve that greatly, and it looks as if that is happening.
Thank you very much. I didn't know that myself. I've got Bruce who wishes to come in now, and then I'm going to bring Philip Owen in, and I think we've had a good debate here. So unless there's anybody else, Bruce and then Philip.
Thank you very much, Kay. I'll be supporting this paper today. I do think that the minute if you put Children's Centre anywhere near any decision that's made by the County Council, do not touch. I think this is a case where we are providing an improvement in the service. The Labour opposition to this particular decision on this paper, I mean, where were they when they were closing my youth club in Southall? I used to work at that youth club, and those children were in need of that service. Where were the Labour Party, for example, when they closed Rufford School? 700 children went to that school, and no consideration was given to my residents that I represented then in Bilsall. And these decisions have been made unilaterally across the whole of my patch, with very little consideration to the residents and the families and the children which I represent. Now, in this case, we are giving consideration to those parents, we are giving consideration to those children, and we are providing a service without being completely tied to a building. It isn't building which provides services, it's people which provide services, and that's what we're investing in. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. And now Philip Owen.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm really, not surprised about the sanctimonious hand-wringing that I've heard from the members of the Labour Party this morning, but it really does beggar belief. The Children's Centre service provides targeted services. Now, we've been told, and I think it was Councillor Vyse, but I apologise if it was someone else, that we're too targeted. Now, how can you be too targeted in providing services? You provide services to those that want it, to those that need it. Time after time after time at Children and Young People Services Committee, the Labour group or the Labour members have said, how are you going to get to those? What about those hard to reach people? And that's a fair comment. And so what do? We go out and reach those hard to reach people. We don't expect them to come through the door. And now they say, oh, you should be doing more to get them to come through the door. Well, if they don't want to come through the door, you can't make them. I don't know, Leader, perhaps you should be like Auntie Wainwright on Last of the Summer Wine and be standing outside there, dragging them in order to use the services, because that's what it sounds like. It really is an utter nonsense. So the proposal, and let me emphasize this if I may, Leader, the proposal is not a reduction of the service, but it's to make better use of a property that is underused by increasing its use for local preschool children. And can I remind members of the Policy Committee, we have a statutory duty to provide sufficient high quality childcare places. And as Councillor Fielding has already said, there are going to be a significant number of new developments in the area. We're going to need more high quality childcare places. And that is exactly what this paper is all about, providing those places, making better use of a building. And Councillor Peck says we're giving it away. Well, of course we're not giving it away. We're passing responsibility for it over to another public sector body in the form of an academy trust. And it's going to be used far more effectively. Now, we were criticised and said that it was because there was a change to from universal service to targeted provision. Well, I can tell you, Leader, and the rest of the committee, the childcare provider was in place prior to the decision to make the service targeted, in place prior to the decision to make the service targeted. And the numbers were still very low. As I said earlier, you can't force people to come in to a building, but what you can do is go out and provide the service for them. And that is what we are doing. And it makes absolute sense to do so. The director has made comment about the consultation exercise, and Councillor Fielding has maintained she knew nothing about it and nothing about the proposals. Well, these proposals were discussed with the school and through the school governing body. And until recently, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, I think Councillor Fielding was a member of that school governing body. So to suggest that she wasn't aware that there were ongoing discussions, I think is just a little bit disingenuous. But coming further to the actual consultation exercise itself, the consultation exercise, the consultation itself was sent to local members, to the local county councillor and to the district council on the 4th of December. The consultation was sent to the local county councillor and the district council on the 4th of December. And guess what? None of them bothered to respond to that consultation exercise. What they did were raise concerns with the chief executive. So it's not surprising, perhaps, that the results of the consultation exercise were a little on the low side. Again, you can't force people to respond to a consultation exercise. But I'm not going to go over that again because the director, Colin Pettigrew, has made it quite clear just how extensive that consultation was. And if there was such an outrage, if there were really such an outrage locally that we were proposing to transfer this building over to the school, then I think there would have been a far greater response to the consultation exercise. And because there weren't enough people in Councillor Rhodes' eyes responding, then we should do it all over again. It's a bit like the Ramonas, isn't it? They got the wrong result, so you've got to do the consultation. You've got to have another referendum until you get the right result. Incidentally, Leader, all 4 of those that responded said they fully supported what we were proposing. So I see no reason why we shouldn't make better use of the facilities that we've got and do that by fulfilling a statutory duty that we are required to fulfill, and to continue with that targeted support for the community, to give those people in the community that need and want the support they are entitled to. And that is what we shall continue to do. And I think it's hypocritical of the Labour Party to suggest that we're doing anything other than that. And so I commend this report and the recommendations to committee.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to just remind you what the recommendations are. To approve the grant of the lease and the running of the 31st, to approve the grant of a lease running to the 31st of January 2145 for the North Worksop Children's Centre to Nottingham and Southwold Diocese Multi-Academy Trust, as indicated on the edged black on the plan attached to the report. And that's on the yellow plan I've already referred to. So that's what we're voting on now. So I'm now going to hand over to the Chief Executive, who will call the names. So Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with Councillor Adair, please.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fold.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Reeves.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
Against.
Councillor Rhodes.
Against.
Councillor Weiss.
Against.
Twelve 6-1. Yep. So it's 12-4, Chair, 6 against, with 1 abstention. So it's carried.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Before I introduce the next item, can I please ask that is the last reference to my persona looking like Auntie Wainwright on Last of the Summer Wines today, please? As it's not very flattering. Let's move on now and come to item 10, which is the youth violence and criminal exploitation on our committee report today. And the committee sets out the report on the youth violence and child criminal exploitation report, which was brought to the meeting in February 2020, and seeks to extend the posts which were temporarily established at that report until July 2022. Good progress has been made in the area of tackling child exploitation, and there are now agreed multi-agency pathways on how to identify, support and manage risks for those children identified at risk. The paper describes the newly established neighbourhood safeguarding and disruption meetings, which are police-led, and the youth violence and criminal exploitation panels, which are NCC-led, and how these work together. Government's arrangements for this area of work sit under the Nottingham Safeguarding Children's Partnership, and details of the steering group are given. The report also shares the positive news that the Nottinghamshire and Nottingham City Safeguarding Children's Partnership were successful in entering a joint bid to the Tackling Child Exploitation Support Programme, which aims to enable a more effective strategic approach to safeguarding children and young people in relation to the extrafamilial harm exploitation. The report details the success of the youth work interventions and mentors project, with some examples of the impact it's having to reduce the risk of young people committing or becoming victims of violent crime, and to reduce offending and reoffending, and to improve aspirations and increase engagement in positive activities, that education, training, youth centres, etc. As such, it proposes that the posts are extended for a further 16 months funding, which will come from the Troubled Families Reserves. And the paper also explains how COVID-19 has impacted on the service and shares positive feedback we've had about the role of youth work interventions during the pandemic. When the posts were first established, they attracted very positive press. This has been through Philip Owen's committee, and Philip, since you are very much instrumental in this, I'm going to ask that you now propose the report.
Yes, I'm happy to propose the report, Leader. I don't think there's a great deal more to add to what you have said, but I think it does highlight the very effective way in which our youth service have been of great benefit during the pandemic, and the amount of work that is going on to reduce youth violence and child criminal exploitation, which I know is a great concern across the county. We need to keep on top of this, and this is a way in which we can continue the very good work. We have a youth offending section which is second to none, in my view, across the country, and I think this report reflects that success and effectiveness of that team. So I'm delighted to be able to second the proposal, Leader.
I think you're proposing it and I'm seconding.
Sorry, I proposed it. Sorry, my mistake.
And I'm happy to second that report. I now have Alan Rhodes to speak. So Alan. You're muted, Alan.
Crikey, I think I get out the habit when you. Anyway, very happy to support this. It is an important paper, as has already been said. A serious issue. Very pleased that, to see the partnership working that's taking place as well. So we will be supporting this report.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other speakers? I haven't seen any hands go up. So the report's been proposed and seconded. Philip, do you want to come in again?
Well, I don't think there's anything further to say, Leader. I'm glad we've got cross-party support. I think it demonstrates the effect, as I say, the effectiveness of what we're doing, and we want to continue with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, can I remind you, we're voting on approve the proposal to extend the 4 full-time equivalent professional range youth workers posts, that's 16 for 3 hours per week, part-time youth support worker grade post until July 2022, as detailed in the report, and agrees to receive a further update on developments of tackling youth violence and child criminal exploitation in 12 months' time. That's what we're voting on for. I'm now going to hand over to the Chief Executive. So, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Cutts. Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Fold.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Vice.
4.
Come back to Councillor Madden. It's carried in any case, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, agenda item 11 then. This is the disposal of Bailey's Field in Newark. And you've all got the information there in the report. It's quite a long lead into this. It's 5 acres site. It's in the former Magdalen School, and it doesn't have suitable access for redevelopment. In the past, the council's worked with the 2 adjoining landowners towards a joint sale for the proposed residential development and sharing the proceeds. This approach failed, as the proposed purchaser failed to gain planning consent from Newark and Sherwood District Council for their proposed scheme. The proposed purchaser has again approached the council and other landowners, seeking to progress again based on a reduced scheme which addresses the issues raised, which would have curtailed the previous planning application. It's likely that approximately 100 homes in total would be provided. They hold an option over land to the west of the site, which is required for water attenuation to enable development of the council's land. The council has therefore engaged in negotiations with the other landowners and terms of sale, which will be subject to receipt of planning consent and have been agreed on are outlined in the exempt report. So that's in the green pages further on. The council has taken valuation advice from the independent chartered surveyors, who've confirmed that the terms agreed are the best represented in consideration of the council, and it's recommended that the approval is given to the disposal of the site at Bailey's Field off Barnby Road, Balderton Gate in Newark on the terms detailed in the exempt item to this report. So I'm going to move and vote on this item in this, and then come to the green paper if anyone has any further comments to make on that. So I'm going to propose that. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to speak to this paper? Bruce, did you wish to make a comment, being a new member?
Yeah, I'll make just a quick comment. Yeah, support this. This has been long coming, actually, to be quite honest with you. It's been on the back burners now for a number of years. There has been an issue with the planning authority, but I welcome this proposal. It's actually the Highfield site has been quite a in and out site as far as planning development is concerned, and has created quite a bit of upheaval, particularly with boundary changes and one or two other issues within this particular area. So what I'm supporting this because it tidies it up and sorts it out. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak to this paper? No, but it's been proposed and seconded, and so I now propose to move to the vote. And I remind you what we're voting on, that approval is given for the sale of the land known as Bailey's Field off Barnby Road, Balderton, Newark, on the terms detailed in the exempt item to the report. I'm now going to hand over to the Chief Executive. Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adair.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Cutts.
4.
Councillor Foll.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Madden. Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Vice.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Let's now move to the work programme, which is set out before you. Remember, this is a dynamic document and can be added to. Is there anything anyone would wish to add to it at this point? No, thank you. David, you would say something? David Martin.
Yes, Chair. Can we do a review of secondary education in the Hucknall planning area?
Would that be for this item, Chair, Chief Executive?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Martin will take that away, give that some thought. It may not be a policy committee agenda item, but we will certainly pick that up. And if appropriate, we'll take that to the relevant committee. I think probably Children's Services, but we'll give that some thought.
Yeah. Also, Chair, if I may, could we review the proposed infrastructure changes to the A611 Derby Road in Annesley?
Chief Executive.
Yet again, we'll take that away, give that some thought. That would either come here or to whatever the successor of Communities in Place is, Councillor Martin, but we've logged it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we don't need to take a vote on that item, I'm reminded. So now I'm going to move to agenda item 13, which is exclusion of the public. And I therefore invite the committee to resolve that the public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve disclosure of exempt information described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can we agree on that, please? I'm going to take that there's no dissension to that, thank you. And I now need to wait until we've had confirmation that the public have been excluded. So about 30 seconds if you'll be indulging on that.
The Prime Minister's roadmap to recovery holds out the prospect that we can return to so many of the freedoms we've been missing, and that by summer and autumn we could be enjoying for ourselves again, getting together with friends and family. All of us are looking forward to that. But between now and then, we actually have quite a long way to go. And the reason for that is that the rates at the moment in Nottinghamshire County are still running at a very high level. It's really important that we bring those rates much lower. To continue with rates at this level, we risk seeing a resurgence which would threaten our local NHS, and it's imperative that we avoid that. So I'm urging everybody, right from the start of this roadmap as we move into step 1, to continue to do all you can to pay attention and to follow all of the rules that are in place in step 1. It's really critical that we don't race ahead to a next step without completing this one. To do that would risk the recovery that we're all looking for.